Warning: contains adult content, including harsh language, violence, and sexual themes, and may not be suitable for people under age 16. In the years to come, the twins didn't see much of their Aunt Kakurita, and when they did, she was much more concerned about their behavior than their parents were. Kenta and Nami didn't tell anyone, not even Kakurita, about their son's brief interest toward each other, so she was completely in the dark. She knew something was very wrong, though, especially after discovering that both boys had destroyed their necklaces she had given them on their 6th birthday. At age 15, Nami had finally found a job, so the boys were left home alone even longer than usual. The environment in the house was tense and hostile, both brothers grinding their teeth and clenching their fists whenever the other was near. Then one day, the tension peaked, and all hell broke loose. Keen was in the living room watching television when Gin entered. He stiffened at the sight of his brother, but scrunched his nose and snatched the remote from the couch. Keen sat up quickly, glaring at Gin, his brown eyes filled with fury.
"What the fuck do you think you're doing?"
he snarled, but Gin kept his cool.
"You've been watching TV for nearly 4 hours,
he snapped back.
"It's my turn." "Guess again, dickface,"
said Keen, and he went to grab the remote from Gin's hand, but Gin dodged him.
"You better give that back, or I will shove it down your throat!" "Don't you have homework to do?"
Gin growled, dodging his brother again.
"Stop rotting your brain and learn to fucking share! I wouldn't share a peanut with you if we were the last ones left on Encephalon and there was nothing else to eat. You're the one who insisted on sharing my bed with me when we got the bunk beds as kids! You sure wanted to share with me then! I was young and stupid. And now you're old and stupid!"
Keen stood up and punched Gin right across the face, and the remote slipped from his hand. He barely flinched, but the two of them were silent as they stared each other down. Then, without warning, Gin roared with rage and launched himself at his brother, tackling him to the floor. They both started hitting and kicking each other as hard as they could, and Keen even bit Gin's hand when he tried to grab his throat. 5 minutes into the fight, the front door opened, and Kenta shouted in alarm, seeing his children quarreling on the living room floor, specks of blood staining the carpet. He himself nearly got socked in the face trying to break them up. When he finally got them separated, he forced them to sit on opposite sides of the couch.
"What the hell do you think you're doing?"
Kenta shouted. Keen and Gin refused to look at each other, covered in scratches and bruises, and Gin was sporting a black eye.
"I am sick of all this fighting. You're acting like you want to kill each other."
"Maybe we do,"
the twins mumbled together. Despite their hatred toward each other, they were still able to speak in perfect unison.
"Why?"
Kenta bellowed.
"You two used to be so close. We couldn't even change your diapers apart without you throwing a fit. What happened?"
"We grew up,"
Gin grumbled, wiping blood from his lip.
"Grew up? Grew up? You're acting more like children than ever! You're turning 16 soon! You're going to have new responsibilities!"
Kenta froze, remembering what his sister had said on the twins' 6th birthday. "When they turn 16, I'm taking them whether you like it or not." He wasn't ready for this. No, they weren't ready for this. He had to go to Kakurita and tell her the boys weren't responsible enough to handle the family occupation.
I'm going out,"
Kenta said, and the boys were surprised to hear how calm his voice was.
"I'll be back later tonight. No more fighting, got it? If I hear you've been fighting, there will be consequences."
Neither twin said a word as their father left the house once more. They sat in a pained silence for a good 10 minutes before either of them spoke.
"It's your fault, you know,"
Gin said lowly, and Keen rolled his eyes.
"According to you, everything is my fault,"
he growled.
"But pray tell, dear brother, what exactly is my fault this time?" "Never mind, you wouldn't care anyway."
Keen gave a frustrated exclamation and threw himself onto Gin, his hands wrapped around his throat tightly, but not enough to choke him.
"God damn it, I hate when you do that!"
he hissed, their hate-filled eyes locked on each other.
"You mention something just so you can get my attention, and then you blow me off. You act like a spoiled little brat to get a rise out of me. And for what? Do you want to hear me say I don't care about you? Is that it? Well, you don't!"
Gin shouted, trying to break free from his brother's grip, but gagged when Keen tightened his hold.
"I care about you more than anything, Gin,"
Keen said, and as he said this, tears started to well up in his eyes.
"If you gave a shit about me, you wouldn't have given me up so easily,"
Gin argued, beginning to cry as well, and Keen's hands loosened.
"When Dad told us we couldn't be together, you just accepted it and threw me aside. I didn't accept it,
said Keen.
I was furious. I was ashamed. Didn't you see how Mom was crying? It's like they thought we were monsters. I didn't want to live with them being disgusted with us. You cared more about the opinions of our stupid parents more than the well-being of your own brother?
Silence followed this question, and they gazed into each other's eyes, which were full of identical sadness.
Yes,
Keen said softly, his voice cracking. The full realization of this hit him, and he bowed his head in shame.
God, I am a monster.
Geen carefully rose his hand and caressed Keen's cheek gently, and he met his eyes again.
I never got over you,
he said with a sad smile.
Every day, I was hoping you'd just take me in your arms and say, screw it. We live in a city full of criminals, scumbags, and plenty of creatures that aren't human. If we're monsters for loving each other, so be it. It's not like they can do anything to us. It's not illegal.
Keen hesitated, but then he grinned and leaned down to kiss Geen on the lips. It was soft and brief, but it made both of their hearts shoot into their throats as they fulfilled one of the urges they had had toward each other for so long.
I love you,
Keen whispered when he broke the kiss, and Geen threw his arms around his brother tightly, trying his best not to start sobbing.
I've been waiting nearly 6 years to hear you say that again,
he murmured happily. They lay there on the couch for some time, embracing, nuzzling each other, caressing one another, and kissing gently. They were happy to finally let go of their frustrations of not being able to be together, and their broken bond was repaired. Of course, these were a couple of teenage boys, so their hormones got the better of them, and their gentle affection turned into a rather feisty make-out session that lasted a very long time. Just as Keen's hand slid to the zipper of Geen's pants, the door opened again, and there was a shriek. The boys did not jump apart, but simply ceased their actions and looked over to see both of their parents and Aunt Kakureta standing in the doorway. It had been Nami who screamed, and Kenta looked livid. Kakureta, however, appeared to be rather amused.
Funny, she said calmly. I thought you said they were fighting, Kenta.
We made up,
said Keen, and Geen gave a little snicker.
Obviously,
said Kakureta, and Nami rounded on her. Don't encourage them, she yelled, but was slapped in the face by her sister-in-law.
Do not speak to me that way,
she hissed acidly, and the twins were extremely impressed. As tears of pain fell from Nami's eyes, Kenta closed the door and strode over to the couch, pulling Keen off of Geen by his shirt collar.
I thought we settled this when you were 10!
He shouted, but neither twin looked at all fazed.
Yeah, and look what that did to us,
said Geen.
We were so frustrated that we couldn't be together, we were at constant war. That's not healthy,
Keen concluded. No! This isn't healthy! Nami screamed, but was prevented from going further when Kakureta stepped forward.
What on Encephalon is going on?
She asked her brother, and Kenta's cheeks flushed with humiliation.
When Keen and Geen were kids, they decided they liked each other,
he explained.
They didn't understand what incest was, or that it was wrong. We gave them separate rooms and heard nothing more about it.
And in return,
Kakureta said slowly,
you let them hate each other?
We figured it was just a phase, said Nami. Siblings fight, that's a fact.
It was more than just fighting,
said Keen, directing his attention right at his aunt.
We wanted to kill each other. It was horrible.
He looked to his brother.
I'm sorry, Geen. I'm sorry too,
Geen said with a nod. He then shot a glare at his father.
It's not illegal, and no harm can come out of it. You can't tear us apart this time.
I am your father!
Kenta exclaimed furiously.
You do not give me orders!
Oh, yes they do,
said Kakureta, and even the twins looked shocked.
Kenta, despite our discussion in the past hour, I can see that, now they are no longer fighting, they are responsible enough to handle leadership duties. Boys, when is your 16th birthday?
2 weeks from now,
the brothers replied in unison.
Perfect,
Kakureta said with a smile. She turned to their parents.
As of right now, they are in training for the position of the society's leader, which means they are a higher rank than both of you.
We're level 5s, Nami said desperately, but Kakureta held up a hand to silence her.
Which is still below the leaders-to-be. Tomorrow, after they get home from school, I will come pick them up and bring them to the facility. There, I will tell them what we have so unfairly kept from them for all these years. Then, on their 16th birthday, I will pass my leadership on to them.
But Kukureta,
Kenta shouted, grabbing her shoulders and giving her a gentle shake.
you're my sister. I don't want you to
She shoved him away roughly, dusting off her jacket.
This is why Father chose me,
She said calmly.
We could have ruled together, but you're too much of a coward, and that's why I am the first woman in the family to lead the society. It was an honor. No, a privilege. And you refused. I didn't waste my life like you did, Kenta, and these boys won't either.
Said Gin in an unsure tone. When were you planning on telling us whatever it is you're talking about?
Tomorrow,
Kukureta replied.
after school. Be ready to go and look nice. You want to make a good impression.
For what?
The twins asked, getting impatient, but Kukureta ignored them.
You're going to let them do what they want.
She told their parents.
They are going to move back into the same room. If they want to kiss, let them. Hell, if they want to fuck, let them. Just leave them alone and there won't be any trouble.
Kukureta, please, Nami pleaded. They are just children.
I was much younger than them, and they proved to be ready at the age of 6 with that wonderful display at their birthday party that year. No more arguments.
She nodded at the twins.
See you tomorrow, boys.
They waved as Kukureta exited the house, leaving a very awkward silence in the room.
So,
Keen said slowly after a moment or so.
for whatever reason, we have control over what you do?
not completely.
Kenta mumbled.
Sounds like we do,
Said Gin.
Interesting. From what I can tell, there's some kind of family inheritance we're getting, isn't there?
Kenta had to hide his face, as he had started to cry. Boys, please go to your room, Nami said gently, holding her husband. Keen and Gin shrugged and quickly went to Keen's room, glad to have a chance to be alone once again. Kenta collapsed on the couch and sobbed, Nami rubbing his back comfortingly. It's all right, honey. You knew this was going to happen someday.
She's my sister.
Kenta whimpered.
I didn't want this. I knew it was going to happen, but I didn't want it.
So, hey,
Keen said to Gin as he sat on his bed.
did you hear what Auntie said? That if we want to kiss, we can,
Gin said, but his grin was sly.
and if we want to fuck, we can.
Keen finished for him.
I'll make you a deal.
Said Gin, straddling his twin and gripping his hair.
I'll make it my birthday present to you. Won't that be romantic? Oh, come on!
Keen pleaded.
We've been separated for over 5 years, and you're gonna make me wait another 2 weeks? You're a sadist! I'm also a masochist.
Gin purred, and Keen bit his lip.
I can't tell you how many times I got turned on when we got into fights. That makes 2 of us.
Keen laughed.
All right, deal. And my present to you will be making sure you can't walk when I'm done with you. I'm holding you to that.
Said Gin, and the two of them were instantly wrapped in each other's arms once more. The students at the high school were very surprised to see the Jisatsu twins getting along, for as long as they've known them, the two have hated each other. It came as an even bigger surprise to see them holding hands, for neither of them cared about the social taboo. On the other hand, the brothers were well known for their frightening demeanor, so not many had the courage to throw insults. The one person that got brave was quickly beaten to a pulp by the twins, which resulted in them getting detention.
Great,
Said Gin as they sat in the classroom after school.
Now we can't go with Aunt Kukureta. Why did that boy have to provoke us? He knew we're not the types to just let people get away with that. Shit, Auntie might not even want us anymore because of this.
Keen snarled, using a pocket knife to carve into the surface of the desk he was sitting at.
She'll hear about the detention and then decide we're not all that responsible after all. But he deserved it! He called us faggots!
As Gin was fuming, Keen clicked his tongue to get his attention, and Gin met his eyes. Keen smirked and stuck his tongue out suggestively, raising his eyebrows, and Gin finally smiled.
You better keep that thing in your mouth, or you'll be licking something a little south of the border. Did you just give me an order?
Keen hissed lowly.
What if I did?
Replied Gin.
Well then, you need to be punished, of course.
Keen lifted his knife and allowed the blade to glint in the light.
But you know I'd love your punishment.
Gin purred.
Boys!
Barked the teacher who was present in the room, and the twins looked over at him.
No talking! Keen, put that knife away!
Both of their smiles fell, and Keen closed the knife and stuck it back in his pocket. He was aware that the other students were watching him and his brother. He almost forgotten they were there were so few. Keen lay his head on his desk and groaned softly.
What's wrong?
Keen whispered, trying to keep from getting scolded again.
Now I'm horny.
Keen snorted, covering his mouth quickly to stifle it. Just then, the door opened, and Kakurita Jisatsu entered. The teacher looked over at her and went pale.
Keen,
she said loudly, and the twins looked at her, surprised.
let's go.
Ma'am?
The teacher said timidly.
They're in detention. They cannot leave.
They are my nephews,
said Kakurita.
They can leave if I say they can. Hurry up, boys.
Keen and Geen exchanged looks, but then grabbed their bags and joined their aunt, leaving the room. They got into the back seat of her car, which was a sleek black Mustang. Kakurita sat in the driver's seat, but turned to look at them.
What did you do?
Beat up a kid for calling us names,
Keen responded.
Why was he calling you names?
Asked Kakurita.
Because we're making our relationship public,
Geen answered.
Are you mad at us?
Said Keen, and to their surprise, Kakurita smiled kindly.
No,
she said soothingly.
It just came as a shock when I arrived at your house and your parents told me they got a call from your principal saying you had detention. I'm glad that it was because of a fight and not because you failed to turn in your homework or something.
So, where are we going?
Asked Keen.
To where I work. But first...
Kakurita handed Keen a Ziploc bag that had 2 brownies in it.
Eat those. I'm not sure how long I'm going to have you out, and I don't want you getting hungry.
The boys nodded, Keen opening the bag and taking out both brownies, giving the second to his brother. Kakurita smiled again, and then turned to the wheel and started the car. As they were driving, the twins quickly ate their brownies. Kakurita kept looking at them in the rearview mirror. Keen looked at his brother, seeing a crumb on the corner of his mouth, and then leaned in to lick it off. Geen smirked, setting his hand on Keen's upper thigh, feeling flirtatious. Then Keen yawned, which in turn caused Geen to mimic the action. Both of their eyelids drooped, their vision turning fuzzy, and Geen leaned on his twin's shoulder, closing his eyes. The last thing Keen saw before he too fell asleep was his aunt's satisfied reflection in the rearview mirror. When the brothers woke up, they were in a dim room, laying on a large bed with black velvet blankets. Keen lifted his head and looked around wearily. He had a terrible headache. He gently shook Geen to rouse him, and he groaned, also seeming to be in pain. His eyes flickered open, looking questioningly at his twin.
Where are we?
Geen groaned, sitting up slowly and rubbing his eyes.
No idea,
Keen murmured.
It looks like a bedroom.
The door suddenly opened, and they quickly looked to see their aunt had walked in.
Oh good, you're awake,
she said with a smile.
I'm sorry, I think I put too much sleeping powder in those brownies.
You drugged us?
Geen said in shock.
Don't be upset,
said Kakurita.
I didn't want to, but it's the rules. No non-member is supposed to see how to get to the facility, or even know about it.
Facility?
The twins questioned in unison. Kakurita sat in a comfy armchair, preparing for the long-awaited interrogation.
Boys,
she began,
I am the leader of an underground organization that has been part of our family for generations. It's very secret, which is why your parents and I have had to keep it from you for so long, though if it had been up to me, you would have known much sooner.
Why do our parents know about it and not us?
Asked Keen.
Because they are members,
Kakurita replied.
Actually, your father was supposed to be the leader. Our own father was the leader before me, and when we were about 4 or 5, we were introduced to this organization, and Kenta was named the successor. But he didn't want to be the successor, she went on. In fact, he didn't want to be part of it at all, but father told him that this was his legacy, and he would dishonor the family for not being a part of it. I spoke up, saying that I would love to be the leader, and thus I became the first woman in our family to take the position. I was just a kid, though, so I had to undergo serious training before father could step down.
What does this have to do with us?
Said Geen, though he had an inkling.
I have no children, as you know,
Kakurita explained.
So that makes you the successors. I figured you want to lead as a team, as your father and I would have been if things had gone Dad's way."
"What is this organization?"
asked Keen slowly. Kakurita's crimson lips curved into a wicked smile.
"The Suicide Society,"
she finalized. The twins both gasped.
"I thought that was just a myth,"
said Keen.
"That's what we want you to think," said Kakurita. "But you were supposed to know about this long before now. Blame your parents. They are the ones who refused to let me recruit you. Unfortunately, I cannot wait any longer, so I told them I'd be taking you whether they liked it or not. That also means that I do not have as much time to train you."
"What do you mean, wait any longer?"
inquired Gin. Kakurita's expression turned serious, and she stood again, approaching the boys and placing a hand on each of their heads.
"I've wanted to step down for many years now,"
she said softly, her voice gentle.
"And when the leader of the society steps down—"
She paused, and then sighed.
"My father stepped down when I was 6. It was a sad, frightening experience, but it was also exciting. It intrigued me."
Kakurita turned from the boys, draping her long hair over her shoulder and combing it with her fingers.
"It's a ritual, the passing of leadership. It occurs in front of the entire society, including the leaders-to-be. Both Kenta and I witnessed our father's death that day, as is tradition. His father saw him die, and his father before that. Kenta cried, but I did not, though I was heartbroken. Father had told us how the ritual works, of course, so I was not surprised to see him take his own life right there on stage. I did not cry because I knew I had a responsibility as the new leader, and I was proud when the ritual concluded."
She took off her jacket to reveal her torso. She wore a sleeveless corset, so her shoulder blades were bare. On the left one, the brothers could see a large scar, but it appeared to be a symbol of an ornate circle with an S in the middle. Around the circle were spikes, making it look like a drawn sun.
"This is our insignia. Each member has it scarred into their skin when joining, but that zigzag border was added to it once I was named the leader."
"Auntie, are you going to die?"
Gin whispered, and Kakurita turned to them once more. She gave them a comforting smile.
"It's been put off for too long," she said. "A leader knows when it's time to step down, and mine was nearly 10 years ago."
"Do you get to choose how to do it?"
asked Keen, who seemed very interested.
"Yes,"
she replied.
"My father hung himself. I'm feeling a little more creative, though. Plus, I think the members of the society deserve to see an impressive show. I've influenced the organization very greatly, and I wouldn't want to let them down at my final performance."
"This is why Dad was crying,"
Gin concluded.
"He doesn't want you to kill yourself."
"Exactly. Your father is a sensitive man. He does not approve of the society's ways, but he has no choice. The only reason I have not given him or your mother their last assignments is because you two were still in the dark, and, as children, you needed them. My generosity has caused many complications."
"Last assignment?"
the twins said together.
"I will explain how the society functions after you have been scarred," said Kakurita. "You turn 16 in 2 weeks. I would like to perform the leadership passing ceremony on your birthday, so that gives you 2 weeks of training, much less than I had. Are you up to it?"
The brothers looked at each other, and then grinned, meeting Kakurita's eyes and nodding.
"Very good. Please follow me."
Keen and Gin stood, following their aunt out of the room. The three of them took an elevator that traveled up many floors before they finally stopped. They walked down a dark hallway before entering what looked like the inside of a cathedral, except it was cold and industrial. There were not many people inside, but the ones that were eyed the twins curiously. Kakurita clapped her hands twice, and the sound echoed throughout the room. The people sitting in the pews went quiet, their full attention on their leader.
"I know not everyone is here," she said loudly and formally, "but to those of you who are, I would like to introduce my nephews, Keen and Gin Jisatsu. They will be taking my place as leader in 2 weeks."
The twins expected talk to break out, but it remained silent.
"I know it's not the first of the month, but we don't have much time, so we're going to have a quick induction ceremony. Can someone please retrieve the suicide manual?
A fishman with a black band around his arm stood and quickly left the room. Kakurita turned to the brothers.
New recruits are always inducted on the 1st of every month.
Understood,
they said together. The man returned with a large wooden box, holding it out to Kakurita, bowing his head lightly. She opened it and lifted an old book with a black cover. She gently wiped the dust off and held it to the twins.
This is the suicide manual,
she explained.
Only blood members of our family are allowed to read this copy, which is the original. All the other members get smaller copies of it. It has been in our family for hundreds of years, and tonight you two will read it from start to finish. I will be testing you on its contents during your training.
The boys nodded.
Now, place the index finger of your dominant hand on the cover.
They both raised their right hands and touched the book with their forefingers. Instantly, a small surge of electricity rushed through their bodies, and they discovered that their fingers were stuck to the tome.
Repeat after me. I have turned my life over to the society.
I have turned my life over to the society,
said the brothers simultaneously.
And have also turned over my death,
Kakurita continued.
And have also turned over my death.
For as long as I exist,
For as long as I exist,
I will embrace my non-existence.
I will embrace my non-existence.
I vow to keep my silence.
I vow to keep my silence.
I vow to follow my leader.
I vow to follow my leader.
I vow to welcome death as a friend.
I vow to welcome death as a friend.
For the sake of the society,
For the sake of the society,
set us free.
set us free.
As soon as the word free was uttered, their fingers were released from the book. Keen and Gin looked at each other, feeling excited about the entire occurrence.
You are now official members,
Kakurita told them, placing the book back in its box, which she took from the fishman.
You are now going to be scarred. Dole, would you like to do the honors?
The fishman smiled and nodded.
Would be delighted, ma'am,
said Dole, bowing. He gestured for the twins to follow him, and they did so, going through one of the many doors to the side of the chapel. They entered a bright room that resembled the massage parlor at a spa, except that it was not quite as comfortable.
Both of you please remove your shirts and lay face down on one of the tables.
The boys obeyed, taking their shirts off and laying on tables that were right next to each other. They rested their heads sideways on the metal surfaces, watching the other's face excitedly.
This is amazing,
Keen said, holding his hand out for Gin to grab.
I never expected that this was the big secret our parents kept from us,
said Gin. He suddenly saw Dole put on a black apron and black rubber gloves. He held a scalpel, and the sight of it made Gin's heart pound.
Surely you knew what Miss Kakurita meant by scarred, didn't you?
Said Dole firmly, and now Keen looked around to see the medical tool.
Yes, she showed us her scar,
said Gin.
But we enjoy pain.
Keen finished for him.
Sexually.
To their surprise, Dole's face broke into a wide smile.
You're not the first,
he said simply.
Just try not to enjoy it too much.
Gin tightened his hold on his brother's hand, and Keen bit his lip, laying his head back down as the blade was placed to his left shoulder blade.
Later that night, Kakurita allowed the boys to stay in a room at the facility so that they could study the suicide manual in private. Apparently, Kakurita herself lived in the building, the bedroom the boys had woken up in being her own sleeping quarters. She informed them that they too would move in once leadership had been passed down to them.
Let's take a break,
Gin said, stretching his arms. He and Keen were sitting on the bed of their temporary room, and Keen had been reading the suicide manual out loud for about 2 hours.
I understand that we're short on time,
said Keen, placing an old black ribbon over the page he left off on before closing the book.
But it's sort of cruel for her to make us read this whole thing in one night. Like she said, blame Mom and Dad,
said Gin. He touched the insignia on his bare shoulder blade, for both boys were still shirtless. It had scabbed over a few hours ago.
This is so cool, Keen. We're going to be leaders of an entire organization. We can do whatever we want. I'm going to miss Auntie,
Keen admitted.
I wonder how she's going to do it. She said she was feeling creative. What do you think that means? More than a bullet to the head,
Gin said with a laugh.
We can do big things for the society, Keen. You realize that, right? Not just for the society, but for Wayward City itself,
Keen said, smiling and pushing his brother to lay down, straddling him.
Kakurita said that the leader has public political duty despite the fact that the society is secret. I suppose that's to keep it covered up. Do you think we'll have to drop out of school?
Asked Keen, twirling a strand of Keen's hair around his finger.
Maybe not,
said Keen.
I don't know. We'll talk to Auntie about it tomorrow. My question is, what are we going to do with Mom and Dad? What do you mean? Well, do we still need them? Or should we give them their last assignment? I personally think we should milk this whole power over them thing for as long as we can,
Geen said with an evil smirk.
They work for us now. We could do whatever we want with them. Hell, we could fuck right in front of them and there'd be nothing they can do. We're not fucking in front of our parents,
said Keen with a grimace.
I know,
Geen said quickly.
I'm just making a point. We can get them back for taking away our freedom, for making us think we couldn't be together. What did you have in mind? We should humiliate them, make them do embarrassing things. I've always wanted to make Dad wear a tutu and prance around for my amusement. Maybe we can humiliate them in a less childish fashion,
said Keen, gently caressing Geen's chest.
After all, we're the leaders now. We have a responsibility and incredible authority. We can do things we only dreamed of doing. We have complete control. Like our 6th birthday party,
said Geen.
Wow, no wonder Auntie was so impressed with that. She already knew we'd be leadership material. Are you sure you want to wait to have sex until after the ceremony?
Keen asked with a pout, and Geen frowned.
Think about it, Keen,
he said softly.
It'd be our birthday, and we'd have just been named leaders of a huge underground organization. Combine that euphoria with our first lustful act of love, and what do you get? The best orgasm ever,
Keen joked, and Geen gently smacked his chest with the back of his hand.
Well, yes,
he said, chuckling.
But you get a moment. Don't you want our first time to be special? Something to be remembered for the rest of our lives? Sure, we could fuck right here, right now, and remember it just fine. But what is the significance? Where's the meaning? I love you, Keen, and I want to show you how much I care for you. We can fuck any time we want after, but for our first time, I want to make love.
Keen's smile became affectionate, and he lay down on his brother to kiss his lips briefly.
You're right,
he breathed.
I've been letting my hormones take control. I didn't think about the significance. I'm sorry. I forgive you, said
Geen, stroking Keen's hair.
It'd be different if we were still held down by our parents, but we have ultimate freedom, so what's the rush? You're a hopeless romantic,
Keen teased.
You love me. Yes, I love you more than anything in existence.
Keen nuzzled Geen's nose gently, and then got off of him.
Come on, let's finish this book so we can go to sleep.
Geen sat up as Keen opened the manual again, continuing where he had left off. 2 weeks went by, and the twins spent every minute by their aunt's side, having taken off of school for their training. Their parents were not happy, but it was because they still did not want their sons to lead a suicide cult. In the time they trained, they rarely saw Kenta and Nami, but when they did, their parents would not meet the twins' eyes. Nami was often seen crying. At last, it was the brothers' birthday, and thousands of people sat in the chapel of the Suicide Society facility. Kenta and Nami were sitting in the front pews, Kenta's eyes glassy as he tried to keep from getting emotional. On the front stage, there was a very nice throne-like chair where Kakurita sat. Keen and Geen stood next to this chair, nervous about the ceremony, wondering how their aunt was going to take her own life. On the other side of the chair stood 2 men, both with the same black armbands that Dole had worn. This color band signified that they were a level 5, whereas the other levels were different colors: white for level 1, yellow for level 2, red for level 3, and blue for level 4. Kakurita stood up, and what little talk was in the room died down. She rose her hands and smiled at her subjects. "My friends," she said calmly, "today I leave you. It has been wonderful to be your leader, and I hope you valued our time together as much as I have." Kenta made an odd sound, which was probably his attempt to stifle a sob. "You have taught me just as much as I have taught you, and I feel confident to leave you at this time. You will not be lost, though, no. Your new leaders, my nephews, will lead you through this life until you're ready to pass on to the next. I have complete faith in them. Though they have not experienced the goings-on of the society for long, I have watched them grow up, and I know to trust their judgment. Before we start the ceremony, does anyone have anything they wish to say to me?"
A young human girl about the same age as the twins rose her hand.
"Yes, Amy?"
Miss Kakurita,
Said Amy loudly, standing from her seat.
you have been a great inspiration to me ever since I joined the society when I was 10. I look up to you, even more than my own mother. I want you to know that we all love you and will miss you dearly.
"Thank you, Amy.
Said Kakurita kindly.
But this is not a goodbye, but more of a see you later."
A majority of the room laughed at that. Kenta covered his face, and Kakurita noticed this. As Amy sat down, Kakurita pointed to her brother.
"Kenta, please stand."
Kenta lifted his face from his hands, tears streaming from his eyes. He obeyed, trying to hide his sadness.
"You have something to say."
I don't.
Kenta mumbled.
"Yes, you do.
Said Kakurita.
My brother, you are crying. You are sad that I am leaving. Are you not going to tell me what you've wanted to say for so many years?"
I...
Kenta closed his eyes tight, but when he opened them again, he looked confident as he gazed into his sister's eyes, which were identical to his own.
Kakurita, I love you. You are an undeniably selfish bitch. You're cold, you're heartless, but I love you. I did not want you to bring my sons into this, and I do not want you to die. You are my sister, my flesh and blood, my family. I did not want you to leave without me.
"Oh, dear brother,"
Kakurita cooed, slowly descending the stone steps of the stage and approaching him.
"you never wanted to leave at all. You didn't want to be the society's leader, nor did you even want to be a member. But it is in your blood."
Stay,
Kenta pleaded in a whimper, gently grabbing Kakurita's pale wrist.
please. It doesn't have to be this way.
"It does, Kenta.
Said Kakurita, wiping the tears from her brother's eyes.
I have been very harsh with you, and I'm sorry for that. It was never because I didn't love you. I care for you, my brother. I always have. We'll see each other again someday."
Take me with you!
Kenta shouted suddenly, and Nami squeaked with fright.
"It is not your time,"
Kakurita said, placing a hand on his shoulder.
"but your time will come. It's up to your sons now."
She gently hugged him, and Kenta threw his arms around her, holding his sister tightly and sobbing. She sighed, stroking his hair sympathetically.
There. This is not a sad occasion."
She pulled away from him and encouraged him to sit. Then she turned and stepped onto the stage once more.
"In fact, this is the exact opposite. Now, would anyone else like to speak before we begin?"
For the next 10 minutes, Kakurita allowed many members to bid her farewell. Most of the words were kind, but there were a couple who spoke their honest dislike for her. This did not faze Kakurita, knowing that you can never be liked by everybody. The twins were impressed at how she spoke to the room, how she held herself, and how her pawns responded. They were even more eager to begin their role as leaders. Finally, when necessary words were spoken, Kakurita held up her hands again for silence. She looked at the twins, gave them a smile, and then turned back to her audience.
"It's time for the ceremony to begin,"
she said confidently.
"Keen, Geen, I would like you to assist me."
Is that allowed?
Asked Keen.
"You're not helping me commit suicide. You're helping me with the preparation,"
said Kakurita, turning to them once more. She handed them a box.
"I need you to stick these on my back."
Geen opened his box and took out what looked like a circular band-aid.
What are they?
He inquired.
"Each one has a certain chemical on it,"
Kakurita explained.
"You'll see why in a moment. I need you to stick them where I can't reach. I'll take care of the other areas."
The twins did as they were told, attaching the band-aids to different areas on Kakurita's back, while she herself stuck some to her arms, chest, face, abdomen, hips, and legs.
"Thank you, boys. Cisco, please bring me that bag I brought out."
One of the level 5s on the stage grabbed a large paper bag that sat at the foot of Kakurita's chair and handed it to her. She opened it, taking out a large can of gasoline and a book of matches.
"Now stand back."
Auntie, are you going to do what I think you're going to do?
Asked Keen, his voice cracking with excitement.
"I guess it depends on what you think I'm going to do,"
she said with a laugh.
Isn't that going to hurt? Like, a lot?
said Geen, making sure he and his brother were a safe distance away. Cisco had also retreated. It only hurts until it's over, Kakurita breathed. Her own heart was pounding out of fear and excitement. Part of her wished she'd be the one watching, for it was going to be a magnificent sight. Yes, it was going to be pure agony, but she was ready, and she knew it wouldn't last too long. She turned to the level 5s behind her. Don't put out the fire until I'm gone.
Yes, ma'am,
they both said in unison. Kakurita took a deep breath, and then opened the gasoline can, carefully pouring it on herself. She made sure that every part of her was drenched, the flammable liquid pooling around her feet. Then she tossed the can aside, took a match, and lit it, dropping it to the puddle below her. Instantly, flames shot up her legs and engulfed her body. She had tried not to scream, but it was impossible, the pain being too great. She stood still, though, not wanting to spread the flames to anywhere but herself. As their leader shrieked, the members watched in awe, and then the room was filled with gasps. The orange flames had hit the band-aids on Kakurita's body, and as soon as they mixed with the chemicals they were laced with, the fire began to change colors. There were oohs and ahs as rainbow fire danced across the woman's body, and even Kenta was too astounded by the beauty to remember that his sister was burning to death. The twins' mouths hung agape, amazed and impressed at their aunt's exit. It was indeed very creative, not to mention gutsy. Soon, Kakurita's screams faded, only leaving echoes in the massive room, and she collapsed to the floor in a heap. Multicolored flames continued to burn into her body as Cisco and the other level 5 approached her, trying to tell if she was dead. When it seemed she was, the unnamed level 5 went over to the fire extinguisher on the wall, pulled it free, and put out the fire. They confirmed that Kakurita was dead by checking her pulse, and then covered her with a deep red cloth made of silk.
Sirs, please step forward,
Cisco said to the brothers, who were taken aback by being addressed so formally. They supposed they had better get used to it.
If you would please remove your shirts and turn your back to the audience.
They did so, and as they turned from the many staring eyes, their hands clasped together tightly. Cisco and his partner both held scalpels to the insignias on the boy's shoulder blades, carving into the skin once more. Both twins bit their lips, not wanting to get excited in front of thousands of people, but it was hard. Luckily, this scarring process was much quicker than before, as they were only adding a border to the circle. When they were done, the brothers were encouraged to face the members once more, and they were shocked at the feeling of empowerment they suddenly got.
Please rise to your new leaders,
said Cisco's partner, and every single person in the room stood. Then Kenta started clapping, and everyone else followed suit. Keen and Geen smiled, holding their heads up high, still clasping each other's hand. They met the eyes of their parents, which were full of tears. It was hard to tell if they felt pride for their children or not. Keen held up his hand, testing the effectiveness of the gesture. The room silenced immediately, and he couldn't help but smile wide.
Thank you,
he called out.
Funnily enough, it is also our 16th birthday. Please sing us a happy birthday.
Once again, he savored the obedience, for the room erupted in a rather messy version of Happy Birthday. It was out of tune and not quite in sync, so everyone finished at different times.
So, is there anything more to this ceremony?
Geen asked Cisco, who smiled, giving a small bow.
No, sir,
he said.
You may dismiss everyone if that is what you wish.
Awesome,
said Geen, now addressing the room.
All right, you all may go home or whatever.
With that, people began standing from the pews and going through different doors, though many level 5s stayed behind to help dispose of Kakurita's body. Keen turned to Geen, looking a bit strained.
Let's go,
he hissed.
I can't wait any longer. Ditto,
said Geen, and the brothers calmly stepped down from the stage and went through a door to the elevators. However, when they were sure the chapel's door was shut, they tore down the hall, crashing into the first elevator they could call. As they were traveling further down, Keen pinned Geen to the wall, kissing him violently. The elevator stopped at the bottom floor, and the twins hurried to Kakurita's room, which had been cleared out a few days earlier, and was now in the process of becoming their living quarters. Keen pushed Geen forcefully onto the bed, locking lips once again, and Geen wrapped his arms tightly around him. After a few minutes, they broke apart, gazing into each other's eyes and panting slightly with excitement and anticipation.
Ready?
Keen purred, and Geen stuck out his tongue briefly.
More than you know,
he replied.
I love you,
said Keen, his hand finding the button of Geen's jeans.
I love you too.
Geen breathed, shifting to help his brother get his pants off. After that, for the first time, the twins became lost in each other, tangled in passion and lust. However, it was not just an act filled with violent ecstasy, but one of deep love more pure than anyone could imagine. It was a good day. Sure, the loss of their beloved aunt was saddening, but just like Kurita had said, this is not a goodbye, but more of a see you later. The twins would see her again someday. Until then, they would do their family proud and be the greatest leaders the Suicide Society had ever seen.